Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Insider Insights, Geeking Out with Cvent Data Nerds. My name is Julie Haddix, and I am joining you from my home in Westchester County, New York. Looks like we have a wonderful group joining us today. See a bunch of you in the chat. We are live and super excited to be talking to you about all the data that we are seeing within our Cvent technology, showcasing some of the trends across meetings and events programs. Before we get started on today's presentation, just a few quick housekeeping details to cover. Looks like most of you have found the chat, but if you haven't and you're in Attendee Hub, the chat is that top button on the engagement panel. Please join us. Tell us where you're joining from. I'm seeing lots of West Coast, East Coast, Central, everywhere in between, maybe even some international. So thank you all for joining. Like I said, we're also live. So that next button below is the Q&A. That's where you can go to submit your questions. We will absolutely be staying around after our presentation to answer all of your questions. So plop them in there or just go in and upvote questions that others are submitting so we can take the most pressing and urgent questions first. The next button you'll see down there is polls. We're not going to be using any polls today, but just know that it's there and a capability of our Cvent Attendee Hub and our webinar platform. The next button you'll see is the survey button. Do not leave today before taking our survey. We'd love your feedback and really to help us improve our webinars going forward. So that survey button, click it before leaving. And of course, please explore our upcoming webinars as well. That would be another button to make sure you check out before leaving today. With that, do you want to go ahead and get started? As I said, my name is Julie Haddix. I am Senior Director of Solutions Marketing here at Cvent. I've been with Cvent for almost 16 years, and I love talking about event technology and the trends that we're seeing in the meetings and events industry for how technology can help to make your event programs more successful. I'm joined today by two of my colleagues. First, I will bring in Kelly Kopak. Kelly is one of our senior managers on the product marketing team. Welcome, Kelly.
Hi, Julie. Thank you for having us here to have this discussion. And I'm coming to you live from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Really excited to be here. As Julie mentioned, I'm on the product marketing team, and some of the solutions that I work on will be highlighted today, most notably our venue sourcing platform, which connects planners and suppliers to facilitate this ecosystem of finding venues for events. And we'll be able to look into some of that data today to see what is actually going on in that platform and the trends that we can uncover. So really excited to get into it.
Awesome. Great, Kelly. And we'll see you and talk to you more here in a little bit. Next, want to bring in our second speaker. Sunny Pyle is our Associate Vice President of Analytics and spends his days digging into all the data to help us highlight some of these trends. Sunny, welcome.
Thank you, Julie. Thanks for having me here. I'm joining all of you from New Delhi, India. Excited to be part of this webinar. I've been at Cvent for more than 10 years now. I have deep understanding of how Cvent's data can help you shape your strategies. As an analyst, I think of myself as a detective, but instead of solving crime, I help solve problems through data. I spend my days digging into mountains of information, looking for patterns and interpreting them to help my audiences like yourself make smarter decisions. I'm basically a detective who trades in flowcharts and pivot tables instead of magnifying glass and a trench coat. So here I am today to help you make sense of sort of macro and micro trends we are finding from the data on our platform.
Wonderful, Sunny, and always appreciate your insights. So really look forward to having this conversation. So I know we have quite a few people here today. Some of you are already Cvent customers and familiar with us. Some of you here today are not as familiar with Cvent. So just want to really quickly, for those of you who do not know Cvent, give a quick introduction to give you a better understanding of how we have the data that we're able to share today. So Cvent is one of the leaders in meetings and events technology, but we actually have two sides of our technology. Our Event Cloud, which provides solutions for event planners, event professionals, and marketers to plan and organize all of their events, as well as the Hospitality Cloud, which provides a suite of supplier and venue solutions to help hospitality professionals manage their group and transient business. And as Kelly mentioned, replying to RFPs, but also some room block management, venue diagramming, solutions to really bring the ecosystem together and make meetings and events successful, and events of any format, both in-person, virtual, and hybrid events. And if you are an event professional, and really the data we're going to be digging into today comes from the Event Cloud side of the house, but we have the platform that can help you manage the entire event lifecycle. That starts with our meeting request forms for meeting approval and budgeting, and goes around the entire life cycle for venue and vendor sourcing, room block and travel, venue diagramming, speaker and exhibitor management, event marketing, event websites and online registration. And then as you get into the day of the event, on-site check-in, mobile event apps, appointment technology, lead capture, and then to showcase the success of your events, event insights, and integrations with other various technology systems. Not going to jump into what all of these solutions do, but just wanted to make sure for those who are not familiar with Cvent that you have an understanding of the types of technology that we provide to give background into how we are able to see the data that we can see within our solutions. So we are here today in our first installment of the Industry Insights webinar. So this is actually what will now become the first installment of what will now become a quarterly webinar series, where we will share with you the learnings and the state of the meetings and events industry based on the data flowing through Cvent technology. So in each of these webinars, Sunny, Kelly, and myself will come to you and share what trends we're seeing year over year, quarter over quarter, interesting new things that Sunny with his detective magnifying glass finds as he's digging through all the data. So happy you're here today, and definitely look forward to hopefully seeing you again on June 28th. Be sure to mark that date in your calendars. As we get started here, just want to comment on, as we went into 2023, the solutions marketing team and I kind of stood back and said, what is the state of the industry? As we looked at the state of the industry, we flagged kind of 9 trends to keep our eye on in 2023. Those trends were the race for space, more connected event programs, the embracing of digital elements within those in-person events as we bring the aspects of our virtual world back with us to in-person, an intense focus on cost savings in this recessionary climate, more strategic use of event data to prove the impact and value of events, virtual, in-person, or hybrid, internal events stepping into the spotlight as organizations really try to better engage their employees in our new hybrid world, consolidation of technology, events being designed more and more with CSG initiatives in mind. So things like sustainability, diversity, inclusivity in the design of events, and of course, rebuilding partner and supplier relationships. So these were really the 9 trends as we came into 2023. We thought we saw heading into the market. We're doing quite a bit to keep a pulse on those trends. We are running a bi-monthly pulse report in conjunction with North Star Media. The most recent results came out in February, and we're seeing a lot in those pulse reports that highlight those 9 trends. First being that in-person events have increased in importance, with 71% of planners perceiving in-person events to be more valuable now versus pre-pandemic. International meetings are coming back, and nearly 80% of planners who planned international events pre-pandemic are actively planning them now. Pipeline is remaining strong for future events, and 2/3 of planners actually anticipate more events in 2023 versus 2022. But we still do have that cost concern. So concern for cost continues to grow, with 51% of planners expecting budgets to hopefully at least match inflation. So hopefully we can keep up. So those are just kind of the trends that, as we took a step back, we were thinking we were seeing, as we looked at the survey results of what you guys are saying and what's in your heads, what we're seeing in our pulse results. Now I want to bring in Sunny to really start talking about, are these trends validated in our data? Are these things that we're all thinking and feeling what the data shows? So Sunny, over to you.
Thank you, Julie. We all know events play an integral role in our organization's success. They are not only incredible revenue drivers, but events are essential to create true connection and community. For decades, events have been a key component of businesses' marketing strategies, and their significance has only increased in the recent years. However, event industry has experienced a roller coaster of change in the last 3 years. It has changed our industry forever. Speaking of change, let's dive into what has changed into the event programs that are managed on our platform and how we could apply some of the learnings into your event strategy going forward. Like I said, a lot has changed in the last 3 years. One of the most visible and prominent change is the arrival of what we refer to as triple threat: in-person, hybrid, and virtual events. While it was mostly in-person events 3 years ago, it has started to look a lot more diverse now. First, it was virtual events in the middle of 2020 that started to enter event programs when in-person events were on the decline after pandemic. Then, with the return of in-person events in the middle of 2021, something interesting happened. Hybrid events started to promote attendee presence on site as well as digital footprint of attendees who could not travel or were not required to travel for that event. If you are an event planner, it looks like a different world in more ways than one. You must engage the audience across all formats, and you must make sure that you have the right technology to run your events. It is not just event programs that have changed, but the event themselves have also changed quite a lot in last 3 years. Different event formats started to make inroads at different point in time. So we're trying to study how some of the basic event characteristics or KPIs have changed year over year in last 3 years. Since in-person events have always been there and they've been there in prominence, we have the luxury to look at some of the event KPIs against 2019 levels, and that's what we have done. For virtual events, we have compared the KPIs across 2020 because that's when they came into existence in a prominent way. Hybrid events and their KPIs have been compared against 2021 index. So let's just look at the first one real quick. If you look at in-person events against 2019 levels, we have found that for the next 2 years after 2019, for 2022 and 2021, average registrations changed. They improved against 2019 numbers. We also noticed that number of sessions actually came down. Average speakers for those events also came down significantly. Average planning window, which is nothing but the amount of time between event launch date and event start date, that has actually reduced in the following year. When you compare the same numbers against 2022, we found out that for in-person events, actually the number of registrations on an average has come down by 6 percentage points. We also realized that average sessions have actually gone up. So there are more sessions per event compared to 2019 levels. There are also more speakers compared to 2019 levels in 2022. And we realized that event booking window has actually increased for in-person events, which is significant because planners are taking a little more time than they did in 2019. When we compare the same KPIs against 2020 index for virtual events, we found out that event average registrations have come down against 2020. Number of sessions have come down on an average. Number of speakers have come down, but average planning window has actually gone up for virtual events. When we did same comparison for hybrid events against 2021 index, we found out that all the KPIs have gone up significantly. Number of registrations on an average per event has gone up, number of sessions have gone up, number of speakers have gone up, and also the amount of time it takes to plan or launch an event to the event start date. That metric has also gone up significantly. In fact, it has doubled compared to last year. One of the great advantages in the event landscape today is the different formats that are available. Like I said on the previous two slides, virtual, hybrid, in-person, even on demand. All those formats are full-fledged approach that somebody is taking as an event planner in times like these. To maximize the potential of an event program, it is essential to carefully evaluate the combination of these formats that best fit with the business strategy, implement the right mix, and analyze the results and iterate accordingly, and repeat that same process event after event, program after program. Now, what we found, which is quite interesting, is that more than 90% of the event programs contain in-person events, which speaks to the fact that in-person events are not going anywhere. In fact, they're only coming back stronger with the help of hybrid and virtual events. One thing is also abundantly clear that in-person events are the core entity around which the entire program is constructed. This is happening despite challenges with inflation, tighter budgets, and other external factors. One would imagine that in-person event actually should go down in times like these, but it's the opposite that's happening out there. There are more than 60% of the event programs where more than one format is being leveraged, or virtual and hybrid formats are also being leveraged quite effectively. We have truly diversified programs where, in 50% of the programs, we are finding all three formats being leveraged in good promotion, which I think good proportions, which I think is quite good because channel diversification is crucial to ensure a successful event program. While we would never argue the importance of in-person events and the benefits companies gain from face-to-face interactions, ensuring there's a balance of different event formats in a program is of paramount importance. Another aspect of a successful event program and the monetization of same is paid events. Paid events are an integral part of any event program's strategy. The fact that primary audience for paid events appear to be customers might explain why they are so desirable. When done right, paid events provide opportunities to foster customer relationships and expand into existing accounts. We all know that there is a higher percentage of in-person and hybrid events that are paid now compared to what it has been previous year, and that share is only increasing year over year. The percentage of paid events that are virtual has actually gone down, which indicates that we are finding early traces of virtual events being leveraged as more like an everyday event. And these are used for a lot of internal events within organizations. These are also used for a lot of promotional and awareness activities that our different organizations are doing in their programs. But in person and hybrid, those two formats are gaining a lot more prominence in terms of what they can achieve for your event goals. To each their own, but it is quite clear that we are finding a lot of evidences that suggest that we are becoming better at leveraging all event formats according to the objective and goals of our programs. Let's move to some of the other behavioral patterns that we have found. We looked at some additional trends, and events are a lot more blended now. That I think is a major highlight. What we have found is that there's a higher proportion of events that contain a weekend day compared to what it was, let's say, 2 years ago. It seems like blended travel has come of age. For the past 10 years, we have been talking about leisure travel, which is nothing but a combination of business and leisure travel. But what is new now is that it has become much more significant, and executives in airline and hotel industry are talking about it in their earnings call as part of their strategy to deliver product innovation to their consumers. What makes this trend important and interesting both for planners and suppliers is that during the course of the stay, attendees are going to be in a business mindset, and they're also going to shift to a leisure mode at some point. In response, how you adjust and align your act of execution and deliver on the expectation of attendees becomes fairly important to conduct a successful in-person event. Moving on, building onto that trend even more, what we have found out that single day events are going through a transformation in the last 2 to 3 years. We can clearly see that more and more in-person events are multi-day events and more virtual events are single day events. That is only expected given we as event planners are getting better at leveraging virtual technology in events, and there seem to be better understanding of when and how to leverage virtual events. And when we truly decide to be an on-site for an experiential aspect of in-person events, we really make sure that those are truly in-person events, which are more and more multi-day events. At the same time, we find that planners are a lot more conscious about delivering a very distinct in-person experience when they decide to be physically at the venue. One could immediately see why blended events are becoming more of a thing when we switch to the next slide. Across event formats, across various event sizes. When we looked at event duration, we found out that it is the first preference of planners to either start the event after the weekend or end their event right at the doorstep of the weekend. For single day events, Thursday is the most preferred day for the planners. For 2 and 3 day event duration, it is either Tuesday or Wednesday, which is a midweek. And then for 3 day or more events, it is usually the Monday, which is the first preference. For event start days, you could see at a high level, move from end of the week to middle of the week to the beginning of the week as the duration of that event increases. One of the most important outcomes for event planners is to meet their attendance goals to call their event successful. We have a thing or two on the attendee registration behavior that could help you with your event planning, in the form of when you send out your communications, reminders, and even start registering attendees for your event. As expected, when people register for events, it changes by event format. One could clearly see that attendees tend to register earlier for an in-person event, and attendees register a lot closer to the event start date for virtual events. For an in-person event, only 19% of the registrations happen in the last week leading up to the event start date. 43% of registrations happen in the last 4 weeks leading up to the event for an in-person event. For a virtual event, on the other side, 37% of the registrations happen in last 1 week leading to the event start date, and a whopping 71% of registrations happen in the last 4 weeks. It clearly tells you there is a timing that works out as a factor, both in the minds of planners as well as attendees. But I think these insights can give you a lot of intelligence about when is the right time when you to start register people, when is the right time when you to send out your promotion or reminder communication as a follow-up. One last thing I want to share with you all is that it is quite evident that event planners are producing events while they're also planning events at the same time. What I mean by that is, while planners are producing events in a particular quarter, they are also planning future events at the same time in the subsequent quarters. So they have their hands full, they have a lot on their plate, and they're just trying to constantly juggle between their responsibilities from event producers to event planners, and that is something which has started to show initial footprint in our data set. In 2022, as an example, we saw that 50% of events that were created in a particular quarter were happening in the next quarter. In the same quarter, and the remaining 50% of the events were happening in the subsequent quarters. Secondly, the percentage of events happening in the subsequent quarters are also increasing year over year. This is the last slide of my section. I know we have covered a lot of data in this presentation, but I hope you learned something new today, and I hope you can apply some of this learning into your business strategy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sunny, and so much great information. While you were talking, I jotted down a few big takeaways that I had for the audience. I just wanted to quickly highlight. So the first, super interesting to see that all the talk about all three event formats being part of event programs for the foreseeable future is playing out. Sounds like almost everybody is back to some level of in-person, but definitely seeing virtual and hybrid maintaining as part of the event program mix. So it's really interesting to see. I thought it was also really interesting that in-person events, while they're smaller in size than 2019, have more sessions and more speakers. And in my mind, especially as a solutions content marketer, that likely speaks to the desire to really meet the needs of your attendees and make sure that as you're building your events, you're really catering to those different personas and attracting your audience for the content that they're interested in seeing. At least that's my solutions marketing take on that one. Also really thought with virtual events, we're really seeing where they fit into event programs. We're seeing that decrease in trying to charge for virtual events, and that they're really moving to single days. So as people continue virtual events in their programs, things like webinars, things like employee trainings are probably the primary use case for that continuation of virtual. And then I think like that slide that you have, that's when people register, is like the sweet spot slide. And I know Matthew, a few others of you out there are asking, do we have these slides available so that you can go back and comprehend this data a little bit more? So just want to make sure everybody has seen right below this panel where you see all of our smiling faces talking at you. There are a bunch of files. That top file, Insider Insights, Geeking Out with the Cvent Data Nerds, is the stack that we are going through. So that is available for you to download, along with, you see some of those other assets that we have available for you on the different trends. I know somebody asked for those 9 trends I talked about at the beginning. That is also in there. So I know everybody wants to spend more time on each of these slides and share it out. All of those resources are there for you. So thank you, Sunny. Those were great takeaways, really great information. Next, I want to bring in Kelly. We're going to move away from registration data and event data and look a little bit more at our sourcing data. So Kelly, over to you now.
Thanks so much, Julie. And I am going to jump into my area of expertise. As I mentioned during the introductions, I am a product marketer on solutions that connect event professionals like yourselves with suppliers, and we call that suite of solutions our exchange solutions. So within the exchange solutions sits the Cvent supplier network, and we're going to take a look at that venue sourcing data. So for those of you that aren't users or familiar with our venue sourcing tool, we have over, and I'm going to get the stat right because we literally just updated our hotel count yesterday. It's 302,000 hotels and venues listed on this platform. And it's actually a free tool. So if you are a Cvent customer, you have access to the tool. And if you aren't a Cvent customer, you still have access to the tool. Everyone has access to the Cvent supplier network, which you can find at cvent.com/venues. So through this tool, we're able to analyze the RFPs that over 100,000 planner users are sending to understand things like size, frequency, and duration of events being requested at any given time. We can also analyze the response behavior from the suppliers and understand the current market conditions. So with that, we're going to take a look at the latest venue sourcing data to give us some of those insights into in-person events. Here, we're looking at sourcing recovery through RFP volume sent from January 2020 through February 2023. You can see January 2020 at pre-pandemic levels all the way to the left. And we now consider that kind of the normal level of RFP volume. And you'll notice RFP volume did not recover to that same level until August of 2022, where we've sustained that same amount or higher level to date, with the exception of December, which is a typical trend around the end of the year and holiday time. So if we compare the RFP growth and room night growth in January and February of this year versus that same time last year, we're seeing significant increases year over year. ADR is also continuing to increase this year from those 2022 highs that we saw, reflected in the light blue bars on the right. So what does that mean overall? And we're seeing the start of 2023 definitely be strong in terms of that volume. Cumulatively, the overall RFP growth is at 33%. The room nights have grown by 47%. And it's probably no surprise, as one of those trends that Julie went over are cost concerns, that rates are continuing to increase. And there's that 7% increase in ADR year over year. So far in 2023, I want to highlight some of those growth drivers. They've been with the larger events, specifically with that 100 plus room night category and events with less than 200 attendees. So to me, that makes it seem like in 2022, planners were more confident in smaller, simple meetings, where this year it's clear planners have been more focused on those larger events, at least in January and February to date. And interestingly, the largest growth was in that booking window of 3 to 4 months, which is shorter than the typical booking window, which is the average of 6 to 9 months. And we've seen that as a typical standard through our data. So events could be getting approved with shorter lead times because of uncertainties with budgets and some of those concerns, or planners may be taking longer to find the right venue that can accommodate their event. And similar to what Sandy shared earlier, planners have requested more events that are starting in that midweek leading up to the weekend, which kind of identifies that leisure trend a bit more. The growth and recovery in the RFP volume is also contributed significantly by new organizations and planners that we've seen source for the first time in 2023. 32% of all the organizations that are sourcing within the Cvent supplier network have sourced for the first time. The majority of our business does come from repeat planners who have sourced through the Cvent supplier network for a long time, but we've seen a proliferation of these new planners in the industry. And much like with hotels, there's been a lot of movement and turnover with event professionals. So we're finding these new sourcers are moving to organizations and building out new teams, and they're relying on venue sourcing technology to do their job more efficiently. And all of this is contributing to our event sourcing ecosystem of planners and hoteliers and making it stronger than ever. The start of the year has also brought positive growth to 75% of the 275 markets in the Americas that we've analyzed year over year. So I want to go into the specific markets that are seeing the most growth when we're looking at the start of this year. Mostly, we're looking at considerable growth in the Southeast US. This region is in the center of the chart. It's seeing the most growth. And planners are sourcing that are located within that Southeast region and also sourcing from all of the other locations located outside of the Southeast US. And some of those larger movers, when we look at the top markets in the Americas, are Denver and Washington. You could see those two bubbles outside on the top right of the chart. Room nights sourced to Nashville have also increased significantly year over year. Some of those Southeast regions that we just highlighted as being the top regions that are being sourced to, they were very, very popular in 2021 and 2020 as uncertainty continued, and many planners were sourcing to these locations for the nice climates and relying on that outdoor space to accomplish their events. So we can see these regions in this chart, the regions like Orlando, Miami, and Tampa, they're continuing to grow. Even though the concerns have lightened, we are still seeing those markets grow. And our network caters to a global audience. I know we are just looking at some of the US markets, but we have planners and venues active worldwide. So we were interested in seeing US planner behavior when sourcing outside of the US. We see that US planners are sourcing more international venues in 2022 and versus the start, we're seeing that more of them are sourcing international venues in 2022 and also in the start of 2023. They're contributing to 60% of the overall international room nights in 2023. And on the reverse, planners outside the US are contributing 5.6% of all of the US RFP volume. So Julie mentioned some of the Pulse results, but I just wanted to reiterate that we're really seeing this as a trend that international meetings are back. According to our February Pulse survey, we saw that 80% of all planners that had sourced international venues prior to the pandemic are currently doing so again. And we know costs are on everyone's minds, but I wanted to show you something really, really interesting in terms of brand scale that planners are sourcing to. You would think, with costs being a major trend and concern, that those mid-scale or economy brands would be the highest sourced room nights to fit planners' budgets. But surprisingly, that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing those more affluent brands getting a larger share of the business despite budget cuts and despite slight rate increases. So upscale brands, along with the independent brands on the right side, have experienced the most growth in 2023 versus 2022. That upper upscale and upper mid-scale brand scale, they're also capturing more market share year over year. And we're excited to see if this is a trend that stays as the year goes on, because I think what we can take away from this is that cost is not the ultimate driver of the event venue. Aspects like amenities and the attendee experience, they're really taking precedence over cost. And that is a trend that we're seeing. Planners are finding ways to rationalize a better experience when it makes sense for their in-person event programs. To kind of build on that and elaborate on the trend, upscale property rates are growing the most year over year. So that goes to show you, that planners are considering properties based on more than price. Diving a little bit more into the importance of the attendee experience and venues that can accommodate that unique experience that attendees are craving. We've looked into some of those new lifestyle brands, millennial brands, experiential brands that are popping up in our network and have been really popular over the last few years. We have the snapshot of the brands for the top 6 chains, and you can see the substantial increase in demand, and this is showing 2022. The increase in demand indicates that planners are seeking something new to meet attendee expectations. We've already discussed that blended travel and kind of leisure trend that blurs the boundaries between personal and business travel. It's clear that attendees are seeking new experiences, whether through wellness or other specific interests. And these brands are really meeting the mark for planners to deliver for their attendees. And what's also interesting is we can see more event diagrams are being created through Cvent. And this is through the coordination of hotels and planners working together on event diagrams, which means planners are relying on diagramming technology to virtually visit venues and visualize their space. And we've seen this is even taking place of a site visit, which is resulting in planners saving costs and not having to do that site visit when they can visualize the event through technology. And all of this further complements, I think, the importance of planners placing that really high priority of the attendee experience. And my final slide, I just want to talk about how, doing all of event planning for the attendees with the experience being top of mind is a lot of effort. And we're really seeing that reflected in our venue sourcing data. We're a witness to all the hard work put in by event planners and suppliers through our platform. And we can see that there are some challenges and difficulties that the hotels have faced with layoffs, staff shortages, and rebuilding their teams. And we're seeing that planners are actually having to resend, in some cases, RFPs due to lack of responses. They have to send to more venues than ever before, 11 on average that are spread across 8 brands. So finding that venue that really fits your event needs is harder than ever. Likely planners know they have to reach out to more and more brands because of the trend that Julie walked us through at the beginning of the presentation. And then that's the race for space. Not only is space hard to come by, but we're finding space that aligns with your goals, that's in budget, and that meets attendee expectations is harder than ever. So ultimately, this trend, we're thinking will stick around, and we'll be analyzing that every quarter. But planners will have to cast a wider net to find what they need, and hotels will have to respond quickly, whether they can accommodate your event or if they can, and they'll have to turn it down. So this helps build the case, I think, ultimately for the use of technology, because the venue sourcing process can be really tricky. Getting venue details up front and creating one RFP to send to all of these venues and all of these brands really goes a long way. And then you have to manage those responses, and this really helps drive efficiencies by using venue sourcing technology in the planning process that is a bit more complex than ever before. And with that, I'm going to bring Julie back on to kind of wrap up with those key takeaways, and then we'll go into live Q&A.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And every time you share that data, the interest in continuing to provide those new different experiences to our attendees just really continues to jump out at me through the use of still upper scale, upscale, even luxury brand properties, as well as that using those newer brands that honestly, until I saw this slide, didn't even realize some of those new brands existed, yet alone the sourcing volume they were getting. So always really interesting. I do know that Nicola, Barry, a few of you were commenting on some of our data benchmarks being against 2020 versus 2019. Did want to verbally address that comment. There is some of our data, especially on the multi-formats, that is newer. So our benchmarks do start in 2020. hear you loud and clear, especially as we dive in more of on the in-person trends to really make sure we're comparing that into 2019 and feedback heard, received. And as we do go forward in this webinar series, we'll be sure to bring those highlights out. That's the type of feedback we'd love. As I said, this is going to be a quarterly series. So if there's other things that you guys would like to see that would be helpful, please do. Again, before you leave today, put it in that survey. We will read it and take it, all your feedback, or continuing to drop that in the chat. At this point, we are at the end of the prepared stats that we wanted to share with you all today. Thank you, everybody who has so far submitted a question in the Q&A button. Again, second button down to that Q&A. If you have some additional questions, comments, please continue chatting in the chat, but we're going to go ahead and turn over to some of that Q&A. So first question that we had, Kelly, I think came in while you were talking. That is, how does it look in 2023 in terms of RFPs compared to 2022? I know you had some slides, but if you could just refresh and double click on that one. That was our first question.
Yeah, and we've seen growth overall so far when we compare 2023, January and February is the data we were looking at, January and February 2023 versus January and February 2022. We're, though, about consistent, I would say, with Q4 2022 of where we are in Q1 so far of 2023 with RFP volume. We do expect that significant growth to happen as, in-person events are just valuable, and we're seeing that through all of the data that we looked at. So I think that volume will continue to increase. There is some data that is showing that increase already in March. So we're excited to keep you in the know with the trends in the next quarter of where that RFP volume goes.
Thank you, Kelly. All right. Our next question that has also received quite a few upvotes comes from Brenda Ainsberg. And I'm happy to try to address this. Kelly, you might be able to chime in as well. Do you have any overall recommendations for the skyrocketing costs of AV? It seems the PSAV Encore merger has created an unstoppable monopoly as they are the major providers in large hotel chains. Thank you for the question, Brenda. Clearly, Cvent is not AV experts. However, one thing I will suggest, and I'll kick it to Kelly to tell more about that, is if you're not aware, Cvent launched our vendor marketplace about a year ago. So Kelly, I know this falls under your portfolio of products. So could you tell everybody a little bit about how to use the vendor marketplace?
Yeah, absolutely. We have over 1,000 vendors listed in the vendor marketplace, and AV and production is the #1 category in there. And when I say #1, it has the most vendors associated with the category. The vendor marketplace is a free tool for anyone with a Cvent account, and it's free to create a Cvent account. So you can create a Cvent account and go in and source venues and vendors within Cvent. And vendor marketplace is super easy to use. You just create an RFI based on your event details, and then you can select one of the 14 categories in the tool to see what vendors are available to match the needs of your event. So AV and production is one of them. So if you want to look at local or global AV vendors for your event, you can do so there and really maximize your time by centralizing your search and finding everything in that one place. And you can get all of your visibility into data and who you're reaching out to in that tool. So I think that's a really great tool for you to leverage to find and explore new vendors.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. And I saw in the chat that Heidi mentioned that she's using outside vendors whenever possible. So that's always an option as well, even with PSAV Encore being the in-house provider, to bring in those other options that you can source through the vendor marketplace. All right, Kelly, we're going to stick with you with the sourcing questions. Next question on the trend of upper scale venue growth. Was it considered that those properties are offering more incentives than in the past to get the booking? Is it more because the planner is booking for luxury or the venue is more flexible?
You know what? And I might defer to Sandy on that one in case he has a little bit of insight on that hotel side of CSN and what's actually happening. I have my assumptions, but I think he might have a little bit of intel there. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sandy.
No, it's absolutely. I'm more than happy to share what I know. So, look, when an RFP goes out, it's not an exclusive RFP for a particular brand scale. You have venues copied from different brand scales, and one of the slides that Kelly covered was on an average, 8 brands that are copied on a single RFP. So, I think in that kind of situation, it's not really a personal preference that planners have for a particular brand. Brand scale or anything of that sort. But I think what's happening is you are able to see that upper upscale and luxury brand scales are gaining market share compared to the other brand scales. Even though when you look at just the proportion of luxury and upper upscale properties globally, that share is much lesser. So for smaller number of properties that are in those two brand scales to gain share year over year, that is significant. So there's definitely a little bit of both. Planners are showing a clear preference that they have towards these venues because of the amenities that they offer, and when they truly are trying to deliver an in-person experience now compared to, let's say, pre-pandemic, they are much more conscious about what they want to deliver to their attendees and how they really make it memorable for them to step out of their home, leave their families behind, attend an event, and really make sure that they walk away with something that they're going to remember, and they would be motivated to attend the next in-person event. So I think it's a little bit of both. It's hard to say what's driving it, but there's clearly a lot of footprint that we see in our data, which indicates that luxury and upper upscale, despite the price increase, despite the cost pressures, they are gaining share against the other brand scales, being a majority in that in terms of number of hotels that are out there.
And I think at the end of the day, the venue that is the most flexible and the most accommodating is going to win the business. And so, what we're seeing here, I think, is the upper scale brand scales being more flexible to this question's point in winning that business. Maybe, staff is responding more thoroughly, more efficiently, quicker too. So I think ultimately that's what's going to win the business, and that's kind of helping to fuel that trend.
Great. All right. Next question, I think, is probably for Sani as well, data guru. Do you have any closure ratio from the RFPs to share? Any data on closure ratio?
I'm assuming that by closure rate, you are referring to conversion rate. And I think the way we look at this, of the bids that were submitted, how many of those are getting converted? So I think what we have noticed for the first time in the last several quarters is that response rate and both bid rate. Bid rate is nothing but of 100 RFPs that you received, how many did you submit a bid for or an actual proposal for instead of turning it down? So for all the bids that were submitted, we are finding that first 3 responders are actually converting more than 60% of the business. So it is important to submit a bid, but it's also important to submit a bid faster than some of the other venues that are copied on that same RFP. So if you're looking for ways to improve your chances to convert a piece of business, both response rate and response time, they are critical, and they're going to give you more chances against your peers who are copied on that piece of business. So I think those are the 2 things I can share. Directionally, if you think about whether things have gone up compared to last year or not, so I think it has remained a little flat in terms of the success rate for different brand scales. It's right. It's clearly in that context of how many venues were copied, which one converted the piece of business against the other. So I think in that small setting, it's more about your actions and your behavior to improve your likelihood of converting a piece of business.
Excellent. All right. Next question. We're going to stick with the RFP trend for now. Talking about international venues, which we said was back. Which countries or cities are leading the growth? Kelly, I don't remember if you had slides saying that. Sandy, I'm sure you've seen it in the data.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't remember the exact names. It's a long list and everything, but I think what we have found is two things. When we looked at international business and the amount of room nights that are being sent or being received in regions like Europe, APAC, Latin America, what we found is that the proportion of room nights that they receive from US based planners has actually gone up consistently in the last 3 years. It has definitely also gone up compared to 2019 levels, especially outflow from US planners to these international destinations. What we've also found, that international meetings and cross-border meetings and groups are actually back in a big way. And I can't speak for entire international because I don't have those numbers top of my mind, but I think I was doing another webinar for Europe a couple of days ago, and we found out that more than 80 countries have sourced business to Europe as a region, which means that that's a lot of countries and that's a lot of places. So at least 80 cities have sourced business to Europe as a region, which wasn't the case because this number has actually gone up by 33% just compared to last year. And I can only imagine this number would have been even lower 2 years back or 1 year back. So I think things are definitely improving and things are definitely coming back to what it was in terms of how connected we were as a sourcing world pre-pandemic, and how it was almost like a free trade going on across various locations and interaction happening across various geographies on our platform.
And I think this is a good takeaway that for next time, we'll include a slide on those outside of the US top markets so we can see where US planners are sourcing to and then where outside of US planners are sourcing to internationally as well.
Awesome. Excellent. Good ads, everybody, for us next time around. All right, still have a couple minutes left, about 5, and a few questions left in the chat. So if you have any more burning questions, please make sure to get them in now. Shifting gears back over to registration on this question. Do you have a registration platform that you prefer? Any new ones that you can share? Asked by Madison. Madison, thank you for the softball question for us Cventers. As I said at the beginning, Cvent provides an array of solutions across the event lifecycle, one of those being an online registration platform. So, of course, we here at Cvent are going to have a preference for our own online registration platform. If you are not familiar with that, little known, you might actually be familiar with it as you used it to sign up for today's webinar, but happy to take down your name and make sure somebody follows up with you, Madison. And anybody else who would like more information on any Cvent products, definitely make sure in survey and chat, we'll grab your name and make sure we follow up with you. All right, with that, I am not actually seeing any more questions in the coming in the Q&A. So I'm going to ask Kelly and Sandy, do you have any final closing thoughts for the group? Softball or question that we didn't prepare for, but any final closing thoughts while we give everybody another second or two to think if they have any more burning questions? Kelly, anything that jumps out at you?
I just want to say, I think that as we, start to do this every single quarter, we'll get smarter about the data that you want to see, and that really is most impactful. We have so many resources that we're creating on trends and benchmarking. A lot of them you can download right now as part of those resources and a part of this webinar. But we have so much data that we are looking at, with Cvent product, and then through outside research. We're just compiling it all and trying to get a grasp of what the market wants to see. So I think we're just going to get smarter in what we share and what you all are looking for. So we want all feedback in the survey so we can get better the next time we're doing this. But I hope this was helpful for you all, and I think it's great to see that demand is back. And Julie always jokes with me that the portfolio products that I manage haven't really been top of mind for a while, and they officially are back. Sourcing is back, so it's just great to see. And then I'm excited to share this data with you all every quarter.
Thank you. Sunny, anything to share with group?
Yeah, I think just a couple of things. I'll join Kelly in what she mentioned towards the end of her comment. Uh, I think there's various evidences that we have in our data in industry research that we do all the time, that there is a lot of positivity now. There is a lot of optimism out there, and we are seeing planners doing things that they haven't done in the last 3 years. And few examples of that would be the international meetings are back. The forward-looking visibility of when and what events we are going to do, that has improved significantly. And first and foremost, I think there's a lot more customer centricity that we've noticed in various data points that we have looked at. Planners are trying to meet as many of the expectations that attendees have, and they are working overtime. They are leveraging technology like never before. There is event diagramming technology, room block technology, registration, three different formats that we talked about. I think there are a lot of things that they're doing, and I think as part of this industry, I can say that we can only be thankful for event planners for working overtime and delivering the true experience and making sure that they are adapting faster than they could have imagined 2, 3 years ago, and trying to bring it home on as many occasions as possible, almost on a daily basis. So kudos to all the meeting planners that are out there. Good job done. And we're going to unpack a lot of this as we go forward from here.
Awesome. Thank you. And yes, just to echo those, thank you to everybody who joined us today. We know you guys are all busier than ever. Events are back, which means you're deep in planning for your meetings and events. So hopefully taking the time to join us today for this webinar was valuable. Again, that deck is there for you to download, share with your teams. Webinar recording will be available right after, should you want to share that out with any of your colleagues, or if anyone couldn't join, they can log in and view this conversation. We'll be back for the next iteration of this presentation on June 28th. So look out for registration information there. And we will be sure before you leave to fill out that survey so we can get any more of your feedback to help us plan for the next iteration of this webinar. And then, of course, we will also be sharing this information at Cvent Connect, our user conference that is June 24th through 28th through 27th, 24th through 27th in Las Vegas. In July 24th through 27th, June 28th on the webinar, July for Cvent Connect Las Vegas. Hopefully we'll see you guys there, as well as at any of our other upcoming webinars that you can find in that upcoming webinars button. 3 more great webinars coming up over the next few weeks in the middle of April before we shift into our May schedule as well. So thank you everybody again for your time today. Thank you, Kelly and Sanny, for joining me and being my experts in all this data. We really are the insiders with the Cvent data nerds. We love having this conversation with you, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. Have a great day.